The strings of the old Steinway grand piano made a pleasant sound under my fingers. I have always loved this moment when an instrument comes to life again after being tuned. Mrs. Hartley, the owner of this beautiful piece, was standing nearby, listening with her eyes closed. "Winifred, you have golden hands," she said when I played the last chord. I just smiled modestly. After 32 years of working with pianos and grand pianos, I have learned to understand these instruments better than people. They have never lied, disappointed, or repelled me. Unlike people. Thank you, Miss Hartley. Just the work I love. I put my tools in my worn leather case, said goodbye to the client, and walked out onto the streets of Providence. The May sun warmed my back pleasantly, and the wind carried the smell of blossoming apple trees from a nearby park. 53 years into my life, and I still couldn't get enough of spring in our small town. My phone rang. Without even looking at the screen, I knew it was Imogen, my daughter. She always called around 4 in the afternoon when she was on a short break at her newsroom. "Hi, honey," I answered, holding my tool case between my shoulder and chin. "Mom, I'll just be a minute." She sounded anxious, her voice filled with office noise. "Did you buy him a present?" Of course I hadn't forgotten. I've never forgotten a birthday. Not Imogen's, not her husband's, not their friends, not their co-workers. I always remembered, reminded, organized. "Yes, dear. I bought that collectible board game you were talking about. And I ordered a cake from Jenkins Bakery." A pause on the other end. Then a sigh. I could almost see Imogen rolling her eyes. "Mum, we agreed that I would order the cake myself. Gareth is allergic to peanuts and the Jenkins is always—" "I remember the allergy," I interrupted her. "I specifically mentioned it on the order. Besides, I paid in advance." Another sigh. "Good. But next time, please. Just let me make the arrangements, okay?" I missed the stab of resentment that pierced my heart. Of course, she and Gareth had been married for 8 years. Of course, Imogen is a grown woman, a publishing editor. But I just wanted to help. "Of course, dear. Whatever you say. I have to go. I'll see you the day after tomorrow." At 6 o'clock in the evening, no earlier, she said a quick goodbye and disconnected without waiting for my response. I slowly put the phone back in my pocket. 8 years ago, when Imogen had just married Gareth, she used to call me 5 or 6 times a day. She asked for advice on everything: how to cook a delicious dinner, how to remove a stain from a shirt, when to water the flowers she had just bought. Now our conversations were getting shorter and more formal. My little house greeted me with silence. After the death of Frederick, my husband, 15 years ago, I could not get used to this silence. First, there was the pain of loss. Then, the fuss with my teenage daughter. Then, helping her through university. And now there is emptiness. I put the case on the chest of drawers in the hallway and headed to the kitchen. I used to cook for 3 people, then 2, and now I cook for just myself. But the habit of making extra hasn't disappeared. I made enough casserole for the whole family, packed half of it for Imogen and Gareth, and put the rest in the fridge. Tomorrow, I will bring them lunch after work. Imogen will sigh and say it's not necessary, but Gareth will eat every last crumb. He's always appreciated my cooking, even though he didn't object to his wife. I spent the evening as usual, reading a book in front of the TV with the sound off. At 53 years old, I allowed myself these little eccentricities, reading and watching the news at the same time, even if I couldn't hear a word on the screen. My phone showed signs of life again around 9 o'clock in the evening. A message from Imogen. "No need to bring food tomorrow. We're having a corporate party." I nodded to myself. Well, that means I'll have the casserole for the whole week. 10 minutes later, my phone beeped again. This time it was a voice message. It was Imogen again. She must have forgotten to say something about Gareth's birthday. I pressed the play button without hesitation. "Gareth, you're not going to believe this. Mom's at it again with her cake present help thing." Imogen's voice sounded different from our conversations. It sounded sharper, with a hint of irritation that she always tried to hide in front of me. I can't take this constant interference in our lives anymore. She calls every day, brings food we don't ask for, and generally acts as if I'm still her little girl. I'm almost 30 years old, and she still controls my every move. I froze with my phone in my hand, unable to stop the playback. You know, sometimes I think it would be better if she moved somewhere. I don't know. To Florida, like all normal mothers her age. At least to another street. We can't even have a normal time together, because she's always showing up unannounced with her casseroles and advice. Pause. Silence. Then a deep breath. Listen. Let's seriously consider moving to Portland. You'll have a better office. I'll have a real publishing house, not this provincial dump. And most importantly, we'll be far away from constant surveillance. I'm even willing to keep her in the dark about the move until the last minute, so she doesn't have time to interfere and ruin things, as she always does. We will tell her at the last moment when everything is already decided. Then she won't be able to change anything. Another pause. Oh shit, I'm sending you the wrong message. I'll call you right away. The message ended, and I remained sitting, still holding the phone to my ear. My hand was shaking. The next moment, the phone rang. Imogen. Hi again, Mom. Her voice was sweet and calm again. I'm sorry to bother you so late. I was wondering if you happen to remember the name of that store where we bought Gareth's cufflinks last year. I could feel my throat tightening, but I forced myself to speak in a normal voice. Atkinson's Jewelry on Benefit Street, I said automatically. Thank you, Mommy. You always remember everything. Good night. Good night, sweetie, I whispered. But she had already hung up. I slowly lowered the phone to my lap. Thoughts were swarming in my head. A controlling mother? The constant interference? Moving to Portland without warning? I tried to remember the last time I'd shown up uninvited. Last week? But I'd given an hour's notice. Didn't I? And the casseroles. Imogen always said she liked my cooking. Or did she? The TV was still on, the soundless faces of the announcers replacing each other on the screen. I looked through them without seeing. Portland. It's on the other side of the country. A whole continent between us. And they weren't going to tell me until the very last moment. I remembered last year. Their strange online real estate browsing, which stopped as soon as I walked into the room. Vague hints of changes in their lives. Missed Sunday lunches under the pretext of work meetings. All this was building up to a clear picture. They had been planning this for a long time. My hands reached for the photo album on the shelf next to the chair. I opened it to the first page. Imogen, a newborn, wrapped in a pink blanket. Her little face so serious, as if she already knew that one day she would run away from me to the other side of the country. Then there's Imogen at 3, with ice cream spreading down her chin. At 7, with a new bicycle that Frederick and I bought after saving for almost a year. At 12, in a hospital bed after appendicitis, pale but smiling, because I had been sitting next to her for 3 days without sleep. At 18, with her high school diploma, proud and happy, I turned the pages, and each photo was imbued with my love and care. When Frederick died of a heart attack, Imogen was only 13. I took a second job to pay for her schooling. I worked at night as a cashier in a convenience store, and during the day, I tuned instruments. I denied myself everything so that she could have everything she needed. And now she's ashamed of me, thinks I'm intrusive. I didn't notice when I started crying. My tears dripped onto the plastic pages of the album, and I hurriedly wiped them away so as not to damage the photos. The old photos would be all I would have as a memento when they left. Suddenly, I found it hard to breathe. I went to the window and opened it. The night air of Providence, cool and humid because of the proximity of the ocean, rushed into the room. I breathed it in greedily, trying to calm myself down. My eyes fell on the garden in front of the house. I had planted every flower, every bush, with the thought that one day Imogen would bring her children here, and they would play on this lawn, just as she had once done. And now it turns out that all my hopes and plans are just my fantasies. I looked at my watch. The hands were pointing to almost midnight. I have 3 clients tomorrow morning. I had to go to bed. I mechanically performed all the evening rituals, washed my face, brushed my teeth, combed my gray hair. In the mirror, I saw a tired woman with eyes red with tears. Was there any other way? Could I have raised Imogen differently? Maybe I should have cared for her less, given her less, and demanded more? Maybe I just didn't know how to be a mother? I couldn't sleep in bed. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every word of that voice message in my head. Constant supervision, intervention, control. Was everything I did out of love perceived by her as pressure? Somewhere around 3 in the morning, a thought struck me. Clear and distinct, as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room. Imogen doesn't need me anymore. She wants to be free of me. It hurts, but it's true. And if she and Gareth can plan their lives without me in the picture, why can't I do the same? For the first time in years, I felt something new. Not pain or resentment, but a strange determination. If my daughter wants me to disappear from her life, maybe that's what I need to do, but not in the way she expects. I got out of bed and walked over to my old secretary. I took out a notebook and a pen. A plan. I need a plan. Not their plan to escape from me, but my own plan to start a new life. The morning after a sleepless night greeted me with a dull headache. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Pale face, puffy eyes, deep wrinkles around my lips. When exactly did I turn into this gray-haired woman with a tired look? It seemed like only yesterday that I was holding a newborn Imogen in my arms. Today was supposed to be a normal day 3 clients, lunch, a phone call with my daughter, dinner alone. But Imogen's words in that random text message changed everything. You know, sometimes I think it would be better if she moved somewhere else. Well, I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. I called all my clients and rescheduled their appointments. For the first time in 15 years, I took a day off without a good reason. Then I pulled out a suit I hadn't worn in a long time. A dark blue, strict suit I had bought for Frederick's funeral. It hung on me, reminding me how much weight I had lost over the years. But it didn't matter. Today, I had to look serious. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I was already sitting in the small office of the Providence Homes real estate agency. In front of me at the desk was Thelma Knight, a realtor with over 20 years of experience. Her red hair was pulled up in a high ponytail, and her bright red lipstick accentuated her smile. So, Mrs. Nightingale, you want to sell your house. This is a serious decision. Are you sure? Her gaze was professionally attentive. Yes, quite sure. My answer sounded firmer than I expected. The house is too big for me, and I've been thinking about moving for a long time. I see. Where are you planning to move to? Are you looking for a smaller apartment in Providence? I hesitated. No, I haven't thought about it fully. I plan to leave Providence. Thelma nodded as she took notes. Are your relatives insisting that you move closer to them? She asked without looking up. On the contrary, I replied. I'm planning to travel on my own, maybe even abroad. So I need to sell the house as soon as possible and without too much publicity. Now Thelma looked at me with undisguised curiosity. Without publicity? You mean, I want to keep the information about the sale from reaching my daughter and her husband, I explained. Thelma nodded slowly. In a small town like Providence, such requests were rare. Everyone knew everyone, and news traveled fast. It makes the process a little more complicated, but it is possible. We can avoid putting a photo of the house's facade in the ad and show it only to pre-qualified buyers. But you realize that sooner or later. Of course, I understand. But by then, everything will have been decided. I spent almost 2 hours in Thelma's office. We discussed the cost of the house, the necessary documents, and the timing. It turned out that my old but well-maintained house in a cozy neighborhood was worth more than I expected. If all goes well, you'll have enough money for a small house in the suburbs, or a nice apartment. Or for a long trip, as you mentioned, Thelma said as I was about to leave. What about the timeline? I asked. How long will it take to sell? It's hard to say for sure, given the state of the market and your privacy concerns. 1 to 3 months. But it could be faster if you're lucky. Leaving Thelma's office, I felt strangely elated. For the first time in years, I made a decision thinking only of myself. Not about Imogen, not about her needs or desires, but only about myself. On the way home, I stopped at a bookstore and bought travel guides to Italy, Greece, and Spain. Countries that Frederick and I had dreamed of visiting someday later. That later never came for him. But maybe it would come for me. At home, I immediately went up to the attic. There were a lifetime's worth of things stored there. Mine, Frederick's, Imogen's, children's toys, school books, clothes that had long gone out of fashion. But I couldn't throw them away. A wedding dress, neatly packed in a special case. Frederick's record collection, which I hadn't touched since his death. I began to sort through the boxes. What is really worth keeping? What has sentimental value? What could be sold? And what should I just throw away? The work turned out to be harder than I expected. Not physically, but emotionally. Every item was connected with memories. The little knitted hat we took Imogen home from the hospital in. The first drawing she gave me was a shapeless stain that was supposed to represent a cat. An album with Frederick's stamps. The letters we wrote to each other before the wedding. I worked for several hours, dividing things into 4 piles. Keep, give to Imogen, sell, throw away. The keep pile was surprisingly small, just the most important documents, a few photo albums, and Frederick's wedding ring, which I took off his finger in the hospital. Everything else either had no real value to me or was too big to take with me to my new life. My phone rang as I was sorting through another box of Imogen's baby clothes. It was her. "Hi, Mom," she sounded as usual, a little busy, a little distant. "How are you?" "I didn't see you at home when I drove by." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to sound normal. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I had some business in the city. By the way, I bought a great gift for Gareth. I think he'll love it." "Oh, great. Listen, I was wondering if you could bake your specialty apple pie for tomorrow." "Gareth loves it." I smiled. Of course, she asked me for help whenever it was convenient. But instead of resentment, I felt only a little sadness. "What time do you want it ready?" 6 in the evening? And Mom, if you don't mind, no raisins this time. Gareth says they're too sweet." "No raisins." "Okay." After the conversation, I went back to unpacking, but my mind was already far away. I was imagining the sea, the beaches of the Mediterranean, small Italian villages where no one knew me, where I could be just Winifred, not someone's mother or widow. The next morning, I baked an apple pie without raisins for my son-in-law's birthday. Then I went to the bank and got information about my savings and pension account. I didn't have much money, but it was enough to start a new life, especially if I added the proceeds from the sale of the house. After the bank, I went to a travel agency where I met a young girl named Zoe. Her bright hair was dyed blue and her arms were covered with tattoos. "How can I help you?" she asked with a friendly smile. "I want to know about tours to Europe. Italy, Greece, maybe Spain," I answered, feeling a little uncomfortable. "For one person?" "For a long time." Zoe nodded, not surprised. "Long term? A week? Maybe a few months?" My answer surprised even me. "Oh, it's not just a tour, it's a journey." Zoe clapped her hands. "That's much more interesting. Let's see what we can organize." We spent the next hour looking at different options. Zoe was a real treasure. She had traveled extensively herself and had a lot of advice for older solo travelers, as she tactfully called me. If you're going away for a long time, you might want to consider renting an apartment instead of a hotel. It's cheaper and gives you more freedom, she advised, showing me several options on the website. What about the language barrier? I asked. In touristy places, it's not a problem. Besides, there are great translator apps nowadays. Zoe showed me something on her phone. And you can always sign up for language courses. It's a great way to get to know the locals. I left the agency with a pile of brochures, tips, and a strange feeling that a new world was opening up to me. A world in which I would no longer be Imogen's mom or Frederick's widow, but simply Winifred. On the way home, I stopped at a clothing store. The last time I bought something for myself was 5 years ago, and then only the essentials. This time I chose a few lightweight dresses, travel-friendly, a sun hat, and a new coat. Things for the new me. At home, I continued to disassemble the attic. This time the process went faster. I knew exactly what I wanted to take with me and what I was ready to part with. I put most of Imogen's things in separate boxes that she could take if she wanted. Frederick's things, which I had kept all these years, also had to go. I kept only his wedding ring, a few photos and letters. At 5 o'clock in the evening, I got ready to visit my daughter. The cake was ready, the gift wrapped in festive paper. I put on one of my new outfits, a blue dress made of light fabric that made my eyes shine. Why not look good? It was my son-in-law's birthday. Before leaving, I checked the mail. Among the flyers and bills, I found a letter from a realtor. Thelma wrote that she had already found several potential buyers who would like to see the house next week. If all goes well, we can close the deal faster than I expected, she wrote. My hands were shaking a little as I put the letter in my bag. Everything was becoming real. In a few weeks or months, this house, this life, would be gone. Instead, there would be... what? The unknown. Freedom. Scary but exciting at the same time. On the way to Imogen's house, I tried to prepare myself mentally. Today, I had to be the perfect mother and mother-in-law. No hint of resentment or knowledge of their plans. No drama. I would smile, give them a gift, eat cake, and ask them how they were doing as if nothing had happened. And then I will return home and continue to prepare for my secret departure. I parked the car in front of their small house, which I helped them buy with a substantial amount as a down payment. Imogen was so grateful then. She hugged me, called me the best mother in the world. When did that change? When did I go from being the best mother to being a burden? Gareth opened the door. He was tall, thin, with thin-rimmed glasses, and he always reminded me of a young Frederick. "Winifred, you look beautiful," he kissed my cheek. "And you smell incredible." "Happy birthday, Gareth." I handed him the pie and a wrapped gift. "Yes, I made it without raisins, just like you like." "You're the best mother-in-law in the world," he winked at me, and I suddenly felt a pang of guilt that I was about to disappear from his life without warning. But wasn't that what he and Imogen had planned to do? Guests had already gathered. Gareth's IT colleagues and Imogen's friend. My daughter was in the kitchen preparing drinks and hugged me. "Mom, you're early. I haven't finished yet." I offered to help, but she shook her head. "No, you're a guest. Go talk to Gareth." While nervously arranging glasses, she looked at me and asked, "New dress?" I nodded. "Yes, bought it yesterday. Decided to update my wardrobe." She smiled. "It suits you. You look younger." I joined the guests, and the evening passed in pleasant conversation, laughter, some IT talk I barely understood, and even dancing when music started. Imogen gave me a few surprised looks. Perhaps she expected me to be as usual, quiet, inconspicuous, comfortable. But not today. Today, I was the new Winifred, preparing for a big change in my life. When it was time to go home, Gareth walked me to the door. "Thank you for the wonderful gift, Winifred. I've been wanting this game for a long time." I'm glad I guessed right, I replied as I put on my coat. And thank you for everything you do for Imogen and I, he added in a quieter voice. She doesn't always show it, but she really appreciates your support. I just nodded, not trusting my voice. If only he knew what his wife really thought of my support. At home, I turned on the computer and started looking for information about visas to European countries. It turned out that for a long stay, special documents were required, but it was all possible to organize. I wrote down important dates and requirements. Then, I looked at my savings again and made a detailed budget. If the sale of the house goes well, I will be able to live in Europe for several years without worrying about money. And there, maybe I will find a new business, new friends, a new life. Going to bed, I looked at Imogen's message one last time. I'll call you in a little bit. Well, I will do everything normally too, until the last day. The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my sleep at 7 in the morning. I reached for the nightstand, trying to figure out who could be calling so early. Winifred? I'm sorry to call you so early. Her voice sounded excited. I have some great news. I found a buyer for your house. I sat up in bed, sleep gone. So soon? It's only been 2 weeks. Sometimes everything works out perfectly, Thelma laughed. It's a couple from New York. Both of them work remotely. They saw the house yesterday and immediately fell in love with it. They are offering the full price without bidding. What's more, they are ready to close the deal within a month and don't mind if you stay in the house for a few more weeks after the sale if you need time. I couldn't believe my ears. Everything was happening much faster than I expected. My new life, which had seemed like a distant future, suddenly became a tangible reality. That's great, I finally replied, trying to collect my thoughts. When can I meet them? This afternoon, if you're free. They're still in town and would like to discuss the details in person. Yes, of course. What time? Shall we say 3 o'clock? In my office? I agreed and turned off the phone, still in a state of mild shock. My hands were shaking a little as I walked over to the window. The morning sun was shining on the garden I had tended for the past 25 years. Soon, it would belong to someone else. Like the rest of the house, filled with memories. Am I doing the right thing? Am I changing my life too abruptly? Should I just talk to Imogen, tell her what I know about her plans? No. I remembered her words from that message. Constant interference. Control. If I told her that I had overheard her plans, it would only confirm her opinion of me. And I wanted to leave with dignity, without drama or scandal. After breakfast, I decided to walk to the city center. The morning was beautiful. Warm May sun, a light breeze from the ocean, flowering trees along the streets. I wondered if I would have time to enjoy one more Providence summer before I left. My favorite coffee shop, Blue Cup, greeted me with the aroma of freshly ground coffee and pastries. I ordered a cappuccino and a croissant, and then sat down by the window overlooking the street. I usually didn't come here on weekdays. It was too expensive for my frugal nature. But today was a special day. I was just pulling out a travel guide to Italy from my bag when the door to the cafe opened and I froze. Imogen entered the room with a colleague from the publishing house, the same girl who had been at Gareth's birthday party. Megan, I think her name was. They didn't notice me. I was sitting in the far corner, partially obscured by an ornamental palm tree. They ordered coffee and took a table nearby. I was about to stand up and say hello, but Imogen's next words stopped me. Megan, you're not going to believe this, but we've been accepted. Imogen spoke softly, but I could hear every word in my corner. The Portland office is expecting him to start on July 1st. Oh, congratulations, Megan replied, squeezing my daughter's hand. This is the job you've always wanted, isn't it? It is. Salary is almost twice as much, full benefits package, health insurance for both of us. And most importantly, it's Portland. Finally, civilization. Not this provincial Providence where nothing ever happens. What about you? Did you find a job there? Imogen nodded as she sipped her coffee. I've had a few offers from publishing houses. They're not as good as Gareth's, but they'll do for now. The important thing is that we're finally getting out of here. And your mum? How did she take the news? I froze, afraid to move so as not to give away my presence. Imogen laughed, but it didn't sound happy. We haven't told her yet. You know how it will be. Tears, reproaches. How can you leave me alone? We decided to wait until the last minute. We'll tell her when everything is ready to move. There will be less drama. But you're moving in a month? That's not very fair to her, Megan said. Look, you don't understand what she's like. All my life she's been controlling my every move. When Gareth and I got married, she came to see us every day. With food, with advice, with questions. I barely convinced her not to give us money for a new sofa. I think it will be even better for her if we leave. She'll find new hobbies, new friends. I don't know, Imogen. I think she's been very lonely since your father died. Imogen shrugged. She chose to live this way. I've invited her to yoga, to book club, even tried to set her up on a date. She refuses every time. Her whole life is me and work. But I can't be responsible for her happiness, you know? I have my own life. Megan nodded, but seemed unconvinced. Still, maybe I should tell her sooner. Trust me. I know my mom better than that. We'll tell her a week before we move. Just imagine. If I tell her now, she'll call and cry every day. Or worse, she'll try to talk us out of it. Maybe even try to get Gareth a job here in Providence. She'll do anything to keep us here. I listened to this conversation, feeling a mixture of pain, resentment, and strange relief. So I was right. They were planning to leave without even telling me in advance. But now I knew the exact date. The 1st of July. Less than 6 weeks from now. Imogen and Megan finished their coffee and stood up. I quickly put my head down, hiding behind my guidebook. Luckily, they left without noticing me. I remained seated, staring at my cold cappuccino. The 1st of July. Surprisingly, this particular date brought a sense of relief. Now I had a clear deadline, and I was going to get ahead of them. When I got home, I immediately called Zoe from the travel agency. Zoe, hi, this is Winifred Nightingale. Do you remember when I came to ask about traveling to Europe? Of course, Winifred. I was just about to call you. I found a great rental in a small town in Tuscany. An old house, everything you need is included, a great view of the vineyards, and the price is very attractive. It sounds perfect. I was wondering, what's the earliest date you can organize a trip? Well, given that you need to apply for a visa, book tickets, I'd say at least 3 to 4 weeks. And if I want to leave on, say, June 25th? Pause on the other end. It's possible, but you'll have to act very quickly. I can help you with an expedited visa, but you'll need to have all the documents ready within a week. No problem. I'll do whatever it takes. Please book me that house in Tuscany starting June 25th, for 3 months. 3 months? Zoe sounded surprised but excited. Wow, that sounds like an adventure. Okay, I'll get everything organized and send you a list of the necessary documents by email. I spent the next few hours preparing to meet with potential buyers. I reviewed the documents for the house, prepared questions, even cleaned the living room a bit, even though they had already seen the house before. At 3 o'clock, I was sitting in Thelma's office, dressed again in my navy blue suit. Sam and Patricia Coleman were a nice middle-aged couple. He is a programmer and she is an interior designer. Both of them were tired of the hustle and bustle of New York and dreamed of a quiet life in a small historic city. Your house is just perfect, Patricia said as she signed the preliminary contract. And that garden. I can already imagine drinking my morning coffee there. I smiled, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and pleasure. At least my house will be in good hands. Will you take care of the garden? I asked. Some of the plants are over 20 years old. Oh, of course, I love gardening, Patricia assured me. We agreed on a closing date of June 20th. That gave me 5 days after the sale of the house before I left for Italy. The perfect amount of time to finalize everything. As I left Thelma's office, my phone rang. Imogen. Hi, Mom. Listen, Gareth and I were wondering if you'd like to join us for dinner tonight. Nothing fancy, just the three of us. I paused for a moment, wondering if this invitation had anything to do with their plans to move. Perhaps they had decided to tell me earlier? But no. I remembered the morning conversation in the coffee shop. I'd love to, dear. What time? 7 o'clock? Gareth's doing his specialty steaks. Great. I'll bring dessert. When I got home, I noticed that I felt strangely calm. In the morning, after hearing Imogen talk, I should have been angry, hurt, and broken. But instead, I felt only a slight melancholy and freedom. Freedom from expectations, from disappointments, from the need to be liked. I pulled out an old leather-bound notebook from my dresser, a gift from Frederick on our 10th anniversary. I sat down at the table and started writing. Dear Imogen, when you read this letter, I will no longer be around. No, don't be afraid. I am alive and well. I just decided it was time to start a new life. The life I've been dreaming of for years, but always putting off until later. I sold my house. By the time you hear about it, the deal will be done. Don't worry about my belongings or inheritance. I left detailed instructions with the notary. Your childhood belongings that you might want to keep are in boxes in the attic. You know, when your father died, I devoted myself to you completely. Every thought, every decision, every step, everything was for you. And I have no regrets. Seeing you grow into a strong, independent woman was the greatest joy of my life. But now you don't need me. You have Gareth, a job you love, friends, plans for the future. And I realized it was time to think about myself. I was going to tell you about my plans earlier, but I didn't want you to worry or try to talk me out of it. You've always been so thoughtful. I stopped, rereading the last paragraph. Was it true? Would Imogen really have talked me out of the trip out of concern, not out of inconvenience? But in the letter, I decided to give her a chance to save face. Let her think that I believed in her good intentions to the end. I am going to travel. First Italy, then maybe Greece, Spain. We'll see where fate takes me. This is a trip that your father and I have dreamed of all our lives, but never realized. Don't try to find me or convince me to come back. This is my decision, and I am happy with it. I'll let you know where I am and what's going on from time to time. Maybe one day you will even come to visit me. Florence has wonderful museums. You will love it. I wish you and Gareth all the best. I hope your life will be filled with joy and love. Love, your mom. I put the pen down and reread the letter. Not a single word of reproach, not a single mention of the overheard message or the conversation in the coffee shop. Nothing that would spoil our last meeting before I left. Imogen would receive this letter only when I was long gone. I sealed the envelope and put it in my desk drawer. Then I went to the kitchen to prepare a dessert for dinner with my daughter and son-in-law. I decided to make tiramisu, a dessert that Imogen loved as a child. A symbolic choice, given my Italian plans. At 7:30, I was already standing on the doorstep of their house, holding a tiramisu and a bottle of good wine. Gareth opened the door, wearing a funny apron with the words, "Chef in the kitchen." "Winifred, come in. The steaks are almost ready." He kissed my cheek and took the dessert. "Imogen will love it." Imogen came out of the kitchen, drying her hands with a towel. She looked a little tense. "Hi, Mom. Is that a new perfume?" "Yes, I bought it a while ago," I replied, hugging her. Over dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. Gareth talked about his work projects, Imogen about a new book she was editing. I talked about my clients and their instruments, trying not to talk about the future. "How is Mrs. Hartley doing? Is her piano still acting up?" Imogen asked, pouring me more wine. "No. This time it worked out fine the first time. She even invited me to her charity event next month," I answered without thinking, and only then realized my mistake. "I'll be in Italy next month." "Oh, that's great. She always throws such fancy parties." Imogen didn't notice my tension. "Are you going?" "I haven't decided yet." I dodged the question. "I might be busy." Imogen looked at me in surprise. "Busy? You? What are you doing?" I shrugged, sipping my wine. "Life is unpredictable, darling. Who knows what can happen in a month?" Gareth looked at me intently but said nothing. "Your tiramisu is the best I've ever tasted, Winifred," he said, enjoying his first bite. "It's an old family recipe. Perhaps I'll pass it down to you both someday." I smiled at my daughter. "So you can make it for your children." Imogen coughed, choking on her wine. "Oh, Mom, we're not ready to talk about children yet." "Of course, dear. Just a thought out loud." We spent the rest of the evening watching an old comedy that all three of us loved. I sat in the armchair, watching Imogen and Gareth on the couch, whispering softly, Gareth kissing her hair from time to time, her head resting on his shoulder. They were happy together. And soon they would be even happier in a new city without her intrusive mother around. When the movie was over, I got up to leave. "Already?" Imogen was surprised. "You usually stay longer?" "I have a lot to do tomorrow," I replied. "Thank you for a wonderful evening." "I'll walk you to your car," Gareth offered, putting on his jacket. It was quiet and cool outside. The stars were shining brightly over Providence. "You know, Winifred," Gareth suddenly said as we walked to my car, "you've changed a lot lately." "For better or for worse?" I asked, trying to sound light-hearted. "For the better, of course. You seem happier, more free." I nodded, not knowing what to say. "Imogen isn't always good at showing her feelings," he continued in a quieter voice. "But she loves you very much. She's a lot like you know? Independent and stubborn." "I know, Gareth," I replied, feeling my throat getting tight. "I love her very much too. Take care of her, okay?" He looked at me strangely but nodded. On the way home, I thought about the evening. How ironic it was that both Imogen and I were keeping our plans secret from each other. Both of us are preparing for drastic changes, but we pretend that everything remains the same. Two sides of the same coin, mother and daughter, so different and so similar. At home, I took out the letter I had written earlier. I read it again and decided that it was perfect. Kind, farewell, without reproaches and insults. A letter that would not spoil our relationship completely, even if Imogen would never forgive me for this unexpected departure. Putting the letter back in the drawer, I went to get ready for bed. Tomorrow, I would have another day of hidden preparations for a new life. A life without Imogen, without Gareth, without everything that had been the basis of my existence for the past 30 years. As I lay in bed, I realized that for the first time in days, I felt not only pain, but also hope. Hope that my life is not over yet, that new discoveries, new places, new people are waiting for me, maybe even new happiness. June 20th was a hot day. The sun was blazing mercilessly, turning the streets of Providence into a hot frying pan. I stood in the notary's office watching Sam and Patricia Coleman sign the final papers to purchase my house. "Congratulations on a successful transaction," the notary, Miss Bloom, said as she handed me the check. The amount seemed unreal, more than I had earned in the last 10 years. "Thank you, Winifred," Patricia shook my hand. "We promised to take care of the garden." "And no changes to the architecture," Sam added. "We like the house just the way it is." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. 25 years in this house was almost half my life. Walls that remembered Frederick's laughter, Imogen's first steps, our family dinners and quarrels, moments of joy and sorrow. But now, this stage is over. According to the terms of the contract, I could stay in the house for 5 more days, which is exactly how long I needed before I left for Italy. 5 days to say goodbye to my old life. When I returned home, I continued to sort things out. Most of the furniture remained with the new owners. It was more convenient for everyone. I kept only my personal belongings and valuables, and even they were too much for my new life. After going through all the rooms, I touched each item for the last time, deciding its fate. The large mahogany wardrobe, a legacy from my grandmother, will remain in the house. The silver candlesticks, a wedding gift from a colleague of Frederick's, are for Imogen. A collection of books, some of them to a charity shop, my favorite ones are with me. Photo albums, scanned and stored on electronic media, the originals are for Imogen. In the end, my entire new life fit into 2 suitcases and 1 bag. Incredibly small for 53 years of life. I spent my last evening in the house in the garden. I sat in an old wicker chair, watching the sun slowly disappear behind the horizon, painting the Providence sky in shades of pink and gold. The roses that Frederick and I had planted the year he died were in full bloom. The apple trees under which Imogen took her first steps were covered with green fruit. Everything looked the same, but I knew that tomorrow morning it would be someone else's garden. The next morning, I woke up with the sun. Today was the day Imogen was to find out about my departure. The day I would finally be free of the burden of secrecy. I took out the letter I had written a few weeks ago and reread it. The words seemed right, kind, but firm. No reproaches, but no fake apologies either. I sealed the envelope and put it in my bag. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. Thelma Knight, my realtor, stood on the doorstep with a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I came to say goodbye," she explained, handing me the flowers. "And to make sure you're doing well." "Thank you, Thelma," I invited her in. We sat down in the kitchen. The house looked half empty. Most of my personal belongings had already been packed or given away. "So, tomorrow is the big day?" Thelma asked as she sipped her coffee. "Italy awaits." "Yes. The plane is at 8 in the morning," I nodded. "Everything is ready." "And your daughter? Does she know?" I shook my head. "She'll find out today. I wrote her a letter." I pulled an envelope from my bag. "Maybe. Could you give it to her? After I leave." Thelma looked at me carefully. "Are you sure you don't want to say goodbye in person?" "That would be too hard." "For both of us," I held out the envelope. Thelma took the letter and nodded. "I'll deliver it tomorrow afternoon, when you are already in the air." After Thelma left, I finished the last of my preparations. I called a taxi for 6 in the morning, checked my tickets and passport, made sure all the necessary documents were in order. Then I wrote a short letter to the Colemans with instructions for the house and garden, leaving it on the kitchen table with the keys. I spent the evening walking leisurely through the streets of Providence. I passed by places that had once meant so much to me: the school where Imogen had gone to school, the park where we used to walk on Sunday mornings, the cafe where Frederick and I had met 60 years earlier. All these places now seemed part of another life, another Winifred. I deliberately avoided passing Imogen and Gareth's house. I didn't want to risk a chance meeting that could ruin my plan. On the morning of June 22nd, I left my home for good. The taxi arrived at exactly 6 o'clock. I took one last look around the empty rooms, locked the door, and got in the car. Everything was complete. The airport in Providence was quiet, with only a few early flights and half-asleep passengers. I checked in, dropped off my luggage, and waited to board, flipping through a guidebook to Tuscany. As the plane took off, I looked out the window at the shrinking city. Little Providence, with its colonial architecture, narrow streets, and peaceful rhythm of life. The city I had called home for most of my life, and which was now being left behind. At this very moment, somewhere on the ground, Imogen was waking up in her home, unaware that her mother had already left the country. By late afternoon, I estimate that Thelma would have delivered the letter. And then the storm would begin. I was right. At 3 in the afternoon, it was only 9 in the morning in Providence, my phone rang. It was Imogen. I turned it off and put it in my bag. It wasn't time to talk yet. Clouds were floating outside the window. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep. I had a long day ahead of me. A layover in London, then another flight to Rome, and finally a trip to Tuscany, to my new home. I landed in Rome late in the evening. Tired, but full of strange excitement. The hotel that Zoe had booked for me for one night was located not far from the train station. It was small, cozy, with a terrace overlooking a narrow Roman street. Only after entering the room did I take out my phone. 12 missed calls from Imogen, 4 from Gareth, and a lot of messages. I took a deep breath and started reading. "Mom, where are you? Call me now." "Thelma just brought your letter. What's going on? We're on our way to your house." "Mom, the house is empty. Who are these people who say they bought it? Please call me." "Winifred, this is Gareth. Please contact us. Imogen is very worried." "Mom, you can't just disappear like that. We've gone to the police." "The police say you left voluntarily and there's nothing they can do." "Mom, what's going on?" "I don't understand." The last message was sent about an hour ago. "I found the travel agency that organized your trip. They said you're going to Italy. Gareth and I are ready to come. Please tell me where you are." I sat down on the bed, feeling my hands shaking. It was so real. I really did it. I left everything and left. And now Imogen was panicking, trying to find me. Taking a deep breath, I wrote a short message. "Imogen, I'm safe. I am fine. Please don't worry and don't come over. I need this time to myself. I will contact you when I am settled. Mom." After sending the message, I turned off the phone. That was enough emotion for today. The next morning, I left for Tuscany. The train arrived at the small station of Montepulciano at noon. I was met by Marco, an elderly Italian man with a grey beard and a kind smile. Zoe had organized him as a local guide and assistant for the first time. "Benvenuta to Tuscany, Signora Winifred," he greeted me in broken English. "I'm taking you to your new home." The house I rented turned out to be even better than the photos. A small stone villa from the 15th century, surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. 2 bedrooms, a living room with a fireplace, a small kitchen, and a terrace with stunning views of the valley. "It's beautiful," I whispered, looking at my new home. Sì, bellissimo," Marco agreed, carrying my suitcases in. "I'll come tomorrow, show you the city, the shops. Today you rest." Left alone, I slowly walked around the house, adjusting to its rhythm and mood. Then I unpacked my things, arranged some of the photos I had brought, made a simple lunch for myself from the food Marco had left in the fridge. And then I went out on the terrace and sat for a long time, looking at the Tuscan hills stretching to the horizon. At that moment, the reality of my new life finally hit me fully. I had done it. I had started all over again at the age of 53. Turning on my phone, I found a dozen more messages from Imogen. She oscillated between anger, despair, and pleading. "How could you do this? Disappear without warning? Mom, I don't understand. What happened? Why didn't you talk to me? Please call me. I want to hear your voice to make sure you're okay. If you don't answer, Gareth and I will come looking for you. Is it because of me? Did I do something wrong? Mom, please." The last message was the longest. "Mom, I talked to Thelma. She said you've been preparing to leave for weeks. Why didn't you tell me? I am your daughter. We had plans. We wanted to. It doesn't matter. Just let me know you're safe. Gareth and I are so worried. And I miss you." I looked at these messages for a long time, not knowing what to say. Should I tell her the truth? That I had overheard her talking to Gareth? That I knew about their plan to move to Portland. That I decided to go first so I wouldn't feel abandoned? No, that would only create more drama. Instead, I wrote a short letter. Honey, please don't worry. I am perfectly fine, happy, and safe. I rented a house in a small Tuscan town. I have always dreamed of coming here. This is my decision, and it has nothing to do with you. It's just time to live for myself. I'll send you a picture when I'm settled. Kisses, Mom. Over the next few days, I gradually got used to the new rhythm of life. Marco showed me around the city, introduced me to his neighbors, explained how the local transportation works and where the best shops are. The people here were surprisingly friendly to the American señora who had settled among them. I became particularly close friends with Sophia, the owner of a small bakery nearby. A woman my age, a widow like me, she spoke good English and had an inexhaustible supply of stories about local life. Winifred, you should try our Italian classes, she suggested one day over a cup of coffee. Tuesdays and Thursdays at the library. Many expats attend. That's how I ended up at the Italian class. The group was diverse. Several retired people from England, a young couple from Canada, a businessman from Germany. We were all united by a desire to become part of this small Italian world. Gradually, my life was filled with new friends, activities, and experiences. I began to study local cuisine with Sophia, joined a group of hiking enthusiasts, and even tried watercolor painting. The landscapes of Tuscany were too beautiful not to try to capture them. Imogen continued to write almost every day. At first, her messages were full of resentment and incomprehension. How could you sell the house? This is our family home. I can't believe you just left without saying a word. After everything I've done for you. Thelma says you've been planning this for weeks. Weeks, Mom. And I knew nothing. Then the tone changed to manipulative. I don't know what to do with your things. There's so much stuff. Gareth has a cold, and I don't know your recipe for chicken soup. The one that always helped me when I was a kid. I thought we'd always be together. That you would see my children. That we would spend your old age together. I answered briefly and rarely. I sent photos of my house, wrote about new friends, Italian lessons. She never mentioned her plans for Portland. I wondered if they had left on the 1st of July as planned, or if my departure had changed their plans. I didn't ask. One evening, 2 months after my arrival, I was sitting on the terrace enjoying the sunset and a glass of local wine. My phone alerted me to a new message. It was Imogen again. Mom, Gareth and I are moving to Portland. He got a great offer and I got a job at a local publishing house. I know it's a long way from Providence, but I was thinking, maybe it's a chance for us both to start over? You could come live with us. Portland has a nice climate, lots of interesting places. We could find you an apartment nearby. Please think about it. I miss you. I looked at the message, feeling my lips involuntarily stretch into a smile. So, they are coming after all. And now Imogen is inviting me. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because she really misses her mother. Maybe one day I will visit them in Portland. Maybe our relationship can still be restored, but on new terms, as two independent adult women, not as a controlling mother and a rebellious daughter. But not right now. Now I belong here in Tuscany, among these hills and vineyards. Among new friends who know me as Winifred, not as someone's mother or widow. I looked at the message again, and then I pressed the delete button with determination. Tomorrow I will write her back. I will congratulate her on her new job and wish her a happy move. Maybe I'll even invite her to visit me in Italy someday. But tonight I'll just sit on the terrace, look at the stars over the Tuscan hills, and enjoy my new life. The life I have chosen for myself.